Hello and welcome to our lesson on blood vessels. We just spent about a week or so on a few lessons on blood. We learned about blood, that it's made up of plasma. The liquid part is plasma, and then the cellular parts has three parts. There's red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So you should be very familiar with the components of blood. And then we just did a lesson about blood types and blood transfusions. So now that you know everything you ever wanted to know about the blood, the next thing we're going to learn is, now that we know about the blood, well, how does our body use the blood? We did say that our body has 5 liters of blood on average, and that 5 liters of blood is constantly circulating throughout our body to every single cell. Well, how does that blood get everywhere, and how does it do, or first of all, what does it do, and how does it do what it needs to do? So today's lesson is about blood vessels. A vessel is just something that carries something. You've heard that term before. So blood vessels are just vessels in the body that carry blood. So we have 3 main types of vessels in our body. We have arteries, capillaries, and veins. So again, the PowerPoint notes are just going to give you a brief overview of those structures. And then when you do your assignments, I know those worksheets that we're doing, they're pretty simple, but I just feel like they do a really good job of simplifying the concepts. And if you work through the worksheets, you've had a very good understanding of the blood vessels. Okay, so like I said, there's 3 types: arteries, capillaries, veins. So let's start with arteries. Arteries bring blood away from the heart. So I use that arteries away. They both start with the letter A. So arteries always bring blood away from the heart. So they carry blood away from the heart to all the organs throughout the body. Very simple. And then when we study the heart, we're going to actually label different structures later on. But for now, arteries bring blood away from the heart. And then arteries branch into smaller branches called arterioles. And I have a diagram on the next slide to show you that. So there you go. There's your heart, and then this is the aorta, the biggest artery in our heart. The aorta comes away from the heart, and then the aorta branches off into arteries, which branch off into arterioles. So arteries away, blood away from the heart. The next one is capillaries, and they're microscopic, so they're very thin. They're so thin that only one red blood cell can fit through them at a time. We just learned about red blood cells, about how small they are and how many we have in our body. So I know these numbers and sizes are so small our mind can't comprehend it. For something so small to be only one red blood cell at a time, that's very, very thin, almost so thin our mind can't comprehend that. Why would we have really thin capillaries? What's the point of that? Oh, because the function of capillaries is diffusion. We learned about diffusion in Unit 1 in this course. And we know that diffusion is, just to make diffusion more efficient, you'd have very thin microscopic capillaries. And in fact, they're so small that we have a network of them. So on the next slide I'll show you, we actually have capillary beds. And the fascinating fact, I think if you unraveled all the capillaries in your body, it would stretch around the world. Well, yeah, at least not even halfway around the world. They literally would go around the world. That's how many capillaries we have in our body, but there's very thin, very microscopic in this capillary bed. And the point of that is diffusion. Basically, all of the work of the blood gets done in the capillaries. That's what the diffusion happens of oxygen and carbon dioxide. We haven't talked about that yet. We'll talk about the actual gas exchange that happens in our next unit, the respiratory unit. So you're going to see the circulatory unit and the respiratory unit overlap quite a bit. And again, here's just a visual of what I've been saying. So I'm going to start here. The words start there, but the diagram starts here. So when blood leaves the heart, it leaves the heart through something called arteries. So this is an artery. An artery branches into smaller arterioles. So an arteriole is just a smaller branch off of an artery. Arterioles then branch off into these capillaries. Look at, they should be a lot thinner and smaller. And it's a network. It's a capillary bed. This is where the gas diffusion happens. When we talk about that in our respiratory unit, basically the work of your circulatory unit happens in the capillary bed, and then capillaries then become venules, and then venules converge into veins. So our arteries, arterial, capillaries, venule, vein. And then once the vein brings the blood back to the heart, and it just happens over and over again. Those same 5 liters of blood just keep circulating throughout your body, constantly to every single cell in your body. My word of the unit, fascinating. It really, really is fascinating. Okay, our fun fact of the day, a bruise. I'm sure you've all had a bruise at some point in your life. That is just when the thin layer around your capillaries are ruptured. So if you ruptured a capillary, the blood rushes into interstitial. I used that word in the last lesson. Interstitial means between cell spaces. So the spaces in between the cell just get filled with the ruptured blood. There you go. But don't go hurt yourself and give yourself a bruise just for today's lesson. But next time you hurt yourself, you're in pain, you're like, oh, remember that lesson we did in biology? Okay, and our third and final vessel are the veins, and I've already talked about them. I've already said that veins bring blood back to the heart. Now, how do they do that? When you work through the sheets, it's not as simple as it sounds. How are you going to get all that blood pumped back into your heart? Well, the main thing they have is valves to make sure it only goes in one direction. And again, your assignment today goes through it in more detail, how those valves work and how they prevent the blood flowing backwards, and how the valves allow the blood in your veins to get back to the heart, so it just keeps going over and over and over again. Like I said in the other slide, venules converge to form veins. So arteries become arterioles, there's again your capillary beds, and then the smaller venules converge to become a vein. And there you go, those are your 3 blood vessels. Pretty simple, and I think you've studied it before in the past. Oh, sorry, one more fun fact, varicose veins. If you don't know what they are, oh, you probably will as you get older. That's surface veins. That's when surface veins become large and they bulge due to large volumes of blood. So what causes varicose veins? Several things could lead to it, doesn't mean it will. Prolonged standing, if you stand a lot, that might lead to it. If you have restricted movement, could be heredity. Sometimes it's just in your family. You might know certain families that it just is heredity. And sometimes pregnancy. I know when my sister was pregnant, she never had varicose veins before, and then all of a sudden, I think not the first pregnancy, but the second one, all of a sudden she had varicose veins, and there you go. So just some fun things to look forward to as you go through your life. Okay, so again, a very brief overview. So you have 2 worksheets to work through, 6-12, the blood vessels, 6-13, the microscopic observation of a vein and artery. Here's the ironic part. We're not using the microscope for this part because obviously you're doing these sheets at home, not here. So on that assignment, we're omitting the microscope part, but you are completing all the rest of it. Even though we're not looking at them in the microscope, they give you some good visuals and definitions to work through. So you've got those worksheets to work through today at home. What's our funny joke of the day? What do vampires cross the sea in? Blood vessels. Ha ha ha. Okay, so good luck with your assignment today on blood vessels.